Everyone. I'm really excited to see that you guys have popcorn. I had no idea that was the snack for the break. So pretty cool that you get to enjoy popcorn while watching us today. Welcome back, everyone. Hi, I'm Phoebe Wells, PR and Partnerships Manager here at ClearanceJobs, and I'm so glad that you all are here today for this session. We focused a lot on data, on all of the things happening in the world right now. And now we're going to shift our focus a little bit to a topic that sometimes gets overlooked in national security, but it's absolutely mission critical, and that's mental health. And I was so thrilled to hear Leading Through Chaos, that panel today with Colonel Chris Saling, and it teed us up so perfectly for this conversation. So I want to welcome to the stage Mika Cross. She's a workforce strategist and CEO of Strategy at Work, who has helped federal agencies reimagine engagement, culture, and performance. And then Alex Snyder, who is the co-founder of Mindful Fed and a former federal employee whose grassroots movement has brought mindfulness and resilience practices into agencies across the government. So together they'll explore how we can build a culture where wellness is treated as a strength, not a liability, and how cleared recruiters and industry leaders in this room can play a role in making that shift. So please join me in welcoming the experts, Alex and Mika. So to start, Mika, what's going on in the world of work in the talent market as it relates to what job seekers are looking for in their next job? So employer branding, candidate engagement, onboarding, et cetera.
Oh, that's a loaded question, my friend. And hi, everyone. Thanks for spending some time with us today on this important topic. One thing that I didn't add to my little bio was that I'm an Army veteran. I've served both as an enlisted soldier and a commissioned officer. I'm also a formerly cleared professional myself, having worked in the intelligence community at the very start of my career, and then all across government in 7 different agencies before jumping to private industry and now owning my own small business. So what's been going on in the world of work, friends? I mean, you all know better than anyone. The last 5 years has really seen, monumental, I'd like to say once in a generation kinds of change in the terms of shift with the workforce. So from quiet quitting to the Great Resignation to job hugging to now what we call quiet cracking, we have seen job seekers really redefine their relationship with work. And that probably doesn't make your jobs any easier, I would imagine. In fact, what's interesting, Phoebe and friend, is that we often don't talk about the impacts to recruiters and those who are sourcing talent on the front lines, especially for cleared roles and positions of national security. And that's where I want to spend a little time with the data. First and foremost, the regular workforce through and post-pandemic have been experiencing levels of workplace stress, anxiety, and burnout at rates highest in history. In fact, most recently, survey data shows that about 75% of workers say they have experienced burnout in the last couple of years. But what about frontline professionals who are sourcing our future workforce and the talent? Your rates are much higher, closer to 80%. Talent professionals, recruiters, those who are pounding the pavement every day trying to get jobs filled are experiencing burnout at much higher rates. And yet, employers are still stating they have about 70% of roles they need to fill, even though you're telling us that you're working 55% harder than you did just 3, 4, 5 years ago. So this is taking quite a toll, not just on the workforce, but also on those who are trying to get jobs filled.
Yeah, and again, earlier today, we had a recruiter talk about the anger that they're experiencing from the candidates that they're interacting with, whether, it's the response time or, they didn't get the role, and that's a lot to take on. So Alex, this is where you come in. Can you give us some practical tips, especially these recruiters in the room who are dealing with so much, for really tending to and nurturing your mental health and wellness, because it's really important.
Yeah, it is. Yes, yes it is. I kind of want to ground this just to start right here. And I guess the question I want to ask is like, what's it like to be you? Like right here and right now in this space. Maybe there's some popcorn, which is nice. Maybe there's some like tiredness. And I wanted to start there just because like that's what this is about. Like we are not brains on sticks. We're not disconnected fingers who type. Like we are human beings that have needs, that have desires, that have wants. They get tired, they get angry. And it all starts with recognizing that. And so when I think about practical tips, a lot of the ones out there are, here are the 5 things you can do. Here's your breathing practice. Here's the going for a walk. Those things are there and they're important. But it's all about understanding what it's like to be you. And the reason you need to start there is because when you get that email from a colleague or maybe from someone who you're recruiting who says, nah, sorry, I'm going with someone else or I'm leaving, that reaction comes from what it's like to be you in that moment. If you're having a stressful day with your family, if you've gotten some other bad news, like we've all felt that kind of lack of resilience that's there. But on those days when you're playing with your kids and the sun's out and things are kind of going pretty well, there's a spirit of resilience, a spirit of like, okay, yeah, that's too bad, but I can zoom out and I can see it. And so like the number one place to start for me is about this quality of self-awareness. What's happening in your body? What's happening in your mind? And starting from there. And for my money, that starts by slowing down. And you might notice how those words land in you with the kind of careers that you have and the kind of work that you have, the kind of clients that you're responding to. And so, I don't know, do you want me to give some more like practical stuff? What lands with you, Phoebe?
Yeah, I mean, but that is a great place to start because how are you going to improve something when you don't know where you're beginning from? And so that, the body scan, the check of this is how I'm feeling right now, these are the thoughts in my brain, these are the sensations in my body, that is an important place to start. But I guess like once you've done that, if you find yourself feeling overwhelmed and almost chaotic and like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna burst at the seams if one more person says one more thing to me that's slightly in the wrong tone, I'm going to lose it. What can you do in moments like that?
Yeah, I would say there's kind of like 2 tracks. And the first track is to sort of use yourself. And so we have these beautiful bodies and nervous systems, and they're great at asking for what they need. And often when we're in our minds, and our minds are pretty chaotic as Phoebe just described, like one of the best ways out of that is not through your mind again, but through your body. And so, I mean, it can be as very simple as, that's all it can take sometimes to sort of create a little bit of space between that reaction, that reply all, and something else. It can also mean moving your body. It can also mean all sorts of ways, kind of as an individual, to sort of connect back to something that's larger than that thought or that idea. But we also use each other. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that takes place in workplace well-being program is they tend to be very atomized, very individualized. So here's your well-being seminar, here's your webinar that you could watch. It'll teach you 5 easy ways to de-stress yourself. What's your problem? Why are you still stressed? And one of the things that we can do as individuals is think about how, as teams, we can come together and support each other. And that's not just through having an icebreaker, which is nice, but it's about recognizing that the vulnerabilities, the tenderness, the stress that we have, it's not just in one of us, it's in all of us. And the more we're able to connect on that, to share what it's like to be overwhelmed, to share what it's like to have something you poured your heart into be canceled. Or I was talking to someone earlier about how he was in the 6th-round interview for a couple jobs, and they just pulled the job out. Has that happened to anyone? Anything you've worked on, you put a lot of hard work into that, and all of a sudden it just evaporated? I see a hand there. It's not just a pivot you have to do in your day job. it's frustrating. It's anxiety producing, it's disappointing. And if we share that, it becomes a little bit less.
And Alex, I love that you just kind of led us right into my next question that I had for Mika, is you've helped agencies reimagine and rework what their to reinforce their workforce engagement and performance. So, what are some tangible ways that these recruiters can go back to their leaders and say, this is how we can embed well-being into the fabric of our organization, especially in this high-pressure environment we're in right now?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, just acknowledging that what Alex was just demonstrating and talking about and giving you examples and tools with, that is a performance accelerator. It drives exceptional results. It affects the bottom line in private industry, profitability, companies that invest in these kinds of skills, not as soft skills, but as strategic skills. Whether you're in industry, government, gov adjacent, you're your own business owner, these are skills that are the new currency of the workforce in 2025 and beyond. Because when we're able to take a step back and reflect on our own experiences, take personal accountability over how we show up, drive the best results, create environments for others too, but that spills over into the workplace for other people. It gives people permission to express when they're not feeling so good, to be vulnerable, to speak up when you have something to disclose. And that is a national security issue.
Can I just offer a fun little, rhymes are fun, right? People use these all the time. I heard something earlier this week at a different conference so you hire people for hard skills and people are fired for their soft skills. Anyone heard about that? So I think without well-being, without kind of taking care of people, you mire. So there's sort of this you talk about quiet cracking, there's the quiet quitting. People will continue to perform and do their jobs if they're not taking care of it, there's not well-being, if there's not the space for them to rest, to not be at 110% for their entire career. They will still perform, they're still gonna do their job, but they're not gonna be their best self, and they're certainly not gonna be their best self for as long as they could if there's that investment in who they are as people.
Yeah, and I think what we call it matters, right? It really does. So if we call it workplace wellness, employee wellness, well-being at work, it sort of connotes something that is a little softer versus what if we called it organizational health and performance? What if we called it team building and resilience, the new leadership EQ? What if we called it something different? Because I don't know, do we have any car fans in the room? Yeah, I'm not either, except for that. I'm not. Except I took my youngest on a trip of a lifetime, a bucket list trip not so long ago. And don't worry, I'm a single mom, so I saved for years for this. But I took him on his 16th birthday to Italy, and I surprised him with a trip to the Ferrari test track. Now, I'm not a car lover either, but those cars are sexy, okay? And when we went to visit the Ferrari test track, I was so surprised. I couldn't take pictures. I couldn't put it on the gram, anything like that. But what was surprising to me was that Ferrari invests in a whole team of medical professionals on site for their drivers. And 2 of them, so 20%, are invested in the mental health and resilience of their drivers, because they recognize and understand that these investments mean that they can drive the cars faster, they can adapt, they can move, their bodies are adaptable and agile, and they are performing at the highest levels for cars that go really, really fast and cost a lot of money. So I was thinking, if Ferrari invests in these things, why aren't our workplaces? We have to.
Yeah, thank you for that. We talk a lot about resilience. We are talking a lot about this right now, and I think that is such a essential, piece to health and wellness. But I'm kind of skipping around a little bit on the questions that we agreed upon before, but it kind of got me thinking, when does resilience almost kind of get rebranded to burnout? Like there's a element of, I'm resilient, I can get through this. It's grit, it's determination, I'm just gonna push forward. How do you differentiate between being emotionally resilient and knowing that you can get through things, and I'm just gonna push ahead and shove down all my feelings? Any advice on that?
Can I answer real quick and then tag to you? One thing I think is important to consider, and a lot of times misunderstood, is that burnout sounds like a buzzword, maybe, right? Oh, I'm feeling burned out, it's just a burnout. But it's actually a workplace phenomenon that the World Health Organization categorizes as long-term unmanaged stress. But then that also connotes that it's an individual problem, meaning we didn't manage our stress well. And it's not, it's an organizational problem. So long-term unmanaged stress in workplaces that don't talk about these things, that don't give you and I the kinds of skills to be able to lean in and take care of one another, is what ultimately causes burnout. Alex?
So when there's suffering that happens in our lives, there's two tracks. There's sort of the acceptance, this happened, like we gotta go on, we gotta get the kids ready for school, we gotta get that memo to our boss. And then there's the being with it. What is this like to feel this way? The disappointment, the frustration, the anger. And we need both of them. Like both of those are important. You can't be mired in something that happened in the past for the rest of your life. And you also can't repress real feelings that are happening right now to you and to your team. If someone spent 15 years in the federal government, we are way over-indexed towards repression, and pretending that saying it is what it is gonna make people perform and make them be okay. And so I say we always need to start with acknowledging what's happening. We are doing a really shitty job right now in the federal government of acknowledging the changes, the impact of those changes on real people, acknowledging how it feels to have your colleagues leave and be riffed on a moment's notice. Like that lands in your system when your friends are being fired, and it could be you next. And so in terms of sort of that balance of finding resilience, but also not letting it be you need to shape up and come on, we have a lot to do. We need to feel them both. And we need to find that balance, not just as an individual, but also as an organization, as teams.
And you talked about your time in the federal government, and I think it is important to focus on the positive of experiences, and part of your positive experience is co-founding Mindful Fed, which is this cross-government agency program that helps people be more mindful and build resilience. So can you share a little bit about the momentum that you experienced with that, and also how that is a bright spot that is there and available for people in the federal government, and how maybe private industry could take any advice that you have to give on starting something like that?
Yeah, so I want to talk about the word momentum, which I think goes back to what Mika was saying about kind of how important this is and how we kind of underinvest in it. It's really a tug of war rather than momentum right now. So I want to give you the arc of Mindful Fed. So there were a bunch of different people who were doing mindfulness programs within their different agencies. And we all kind of got connected about 4 years ago. And we said, this is the telework era, we're doing a lot of Zoom. Why don't we just combine our forces so we're not just a bunch of small entities, we're actually bringing it together. So we did that. And we built listservs of hundreds, thousands of people. We wound up having about 100 people coming to our sessions every week. We had so much success that the Office of Personnel Management said, we want this to be our success too, and sort of claim credit for it, which we're happy to give them. And they hired 2 full-time people to run this thing. So there's Mindful Fed being run by 2 full-time people in the federal government. It's pretty unprecedented. Fast forward to this past election. In the aftermath, the Office of Personnel Management fired both those people. My agency shuttered our mindfulness program at GSA, where I used to be. And so there's this sense that, especially in this kind of Doge era, that it's inefficient. It's not actually the right thing to do to take care of people and to sort of provide time and space for these programs.
And so I guess with the current climate, as this is how it is, this is the moment we're living in, What are steps that people can take to improve the workforce for that specific area?
I actually have some really great news because I'm working with teams in the Department of War and the Department of Army. And these are teams in 2025 who have been struggling, but also leaning in to connect with one another. And so to your point, we weren't designing these as individual wellness or well-being programs. We were designing them as a team sport. So remember when, and they might still be there, those huge drones were flying over, and especially in New Jersey, they were being seen. These are people in the Army Research Lab who would go in and out of work and see the huge car-sized drones flying over their workplace and then in their homes. And everyone was saying, the FAA was saying, the FBI was saying, the Army Research Lab was saying that they're not ours. They have no idea what they are. They're stressed out and they have to go to work. And so we were creating programs to have conversations together and also hear and learn from people's experiences in terms of how we can support them even during times where we might not have the answers, where we might not be able to solve the problems, but we be able to create connection and community around really big challenges and layoffs, rifts, reductions, stopping spending, all of those things. And so I want to give a little ray of hope that there are some teams and organizations still focused on this, maybe called something different, but they still are making some really cool investments. And I think it's paying off too.
Yeah, and maybe just to give like 3 concrete things. I'm getting a sense, Phoebe, you want us to get the concrete. So I like what Mika said. It's really integrated. Don't talk about a new program. Talk about how you can make this part of what you're already doing. Team meetings, make space to check in before and after. During your performance evaluations, don't just ask people about how they're performing, ask them how they're taking care of their mental health. Like that's part of that conversation. And the third thing is, as a recruiter, someone who's managing people, model this yourself. Tell people when you're stressed, tell people when you're anxious, tell people when you need to take a break. That is courageous, it's vulnerable, but that's how you authorize others to do the same.
That's a really good point, because for you recruiters, if you're not listing things like, work time off for physical activity or investments and incentives in wellness, EAP, those kinds of programs that probably external candidates who had never worked for your agency or organization before understand what they are, that's a really great way for you to get top-notch talent in the door. In fact, position descriptions that state worker well-being or positive culture see candidate engagement of upwards of 25% greater than their counterparts that don't list those programs, and from specialized talent. So when you're competing, and you saw the data, I was pretty stark, the 27% of recruiters who experience still competition with remote roles that can't often be done in positions of national security. Other incentives matter. Flexible work schedules, nursing mothers programs, elder care programs, employee assistance programs. Well, what does that mean? So in plain language, you can be having these kinds of conversations to say, we are building the kind of culture where we want to accommodate everyone's needs, preferences, as best we can based on the mission.
Can I have one more thing? This all starts with caring about people. Like what Mika just described, it's not a new initiative to improve wellness. I was talking to someone over there, Kendra, who was talking about her team. And I saw her eyes shift to these caring motherly eyes of like, these people support me, they help me perform my job, and I love them. And that's where the check-in questions come from. That's where, hey, how is your mental health? Like, this has been a really stressful week. That's where that comes from. It comes from the care. And the program is the manifestation of that care.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I know we had many other questions to get to, but I want to leave some time for questions. So if anyone has any questions for Alex and Mika, please, they're here to answer your questions. If anyone has any. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can. She's bringing you a mic, and then we'll go to you after. I didn't even see you there in the front.
Hi, my name's Tracy. I'm with Athenix. I was just wondering if you had recommendations for organizations like your own that we can direct those folks to who are not employed right now, so the company cannot provide that type of service, that we might be able to encourage them if we know that they're struggling. I know that I'm not a recruiter, but I am often talking to folks who are out of work right now. So, of course, we saw in the job numbers the other day that over half of the people who are unemployed have been unemployed for over 6 months. So that resilience factor is waning, and it would be pretty awesome if we can direct them to more official organizations than just trying to talk them off of certain ledges from where we sit.
I think just the starting point, I feel like the tenderness and care in your voice. And I think that conversation you have with someone is gonna be a lot, just like sharing that. So I wouldn't undercount that as like the starting point for making someone feel supported and cared for. Beyond that, I think the tricky thing about well-being and mental health is it's so individual. And it's about people being aware of what is happening in their bodies and in their minds and finding their own diagnosis of what they need. And so for me, the most important thing is to sort of emphasize that this is a priority. This is something to start with because this is really hard.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in terms of some practical tips too, I'd be happy to follow up if you want with a list. But I was also thinking Mental Health America is a great nonprofit you can point people to. There are still some free screening resources and really good reading materials on like CDC and the website, HHS website, and they're free and available there. And they do point them to community resources as well. That might be helpful. And in the morning session that you mentioned, Phoebe, I also was thinking, wouldn't it help your heart to be able to point candidates who aren't selected or who you have to say no to at the end of a long process, to point them maybe into some community resources as well? You can't fix and solve every problem, and I know that probably causes a lot of stress and anxiety for each and every one of you when you're dealing with those really hard situations with your candidates that you're working with. And there are some free employment resources that are funded by Department of Labor, our taxpayer dollars. They're called American Job Centers, Career One Stop. People can put in their zip code and find the closest one. And maybe even just having a few tools in your toolkit would help lighten the load for you to be able to point them. So sorry this didn't work out, that we were not the hiring decision official, but here are a few resources to point you in the right direction for you and your families if that's helpful. Maybe that helps a little bit.
And just to add, I have a website, Slow Mindfulness, and there's a tools tab, which I designed mainly to have cute dog pics, because that's what we all need, but it has kind of like categorized resources that might help people.
And then I think
So come from a small business, just over 50. We have almost 40% veteran population. I'm a vet myself, SDVOSB, and we lost an employee in March to mental health. And so we've been dealing a lot with how to address the stigma of talking about mental health, especially with highly cleared folks and the boys club. And, just making sure that managers recognize signs and are, encouraging people to talk. So any recommendations for resources for managers to support their people and to recognize and to know when to escalate?
I'm going to jump in. I have to say, I think it starts, again, like what we call things matter, and that's a very serious issue. For me, I would look to maybe if you have a high veteran population, maybe looking at va.gov and seeing what resources are available, both for managers and for the workforce. But also, this comes down to those skills that we were talking about. If we can learn to connect with one another and create cultures of curiosity where we're asking better questions, then Alex feels safe disclosing to me his grief when something happened in his personal life or mine. And maybe that's a skill that we really need to start taking seriously, so that before it becomes a mental health issue that leads to something as serious as death by suicide, and then you're dealing with grief and loss in the workplace for all the people that are left behind, and guilt, we teach people the skills of how to connect, how to create cultures of care, dare I say care, even in these high VUCA environments that you're supporting and we're all navigating.
And just to add one thing, I think like these conversations are all kind of on a continuum. If you get to know people, then they're more likely to share when things get really dark. And if you have your bingo card, AI is taking us away from this. I mean, there's this awful story of a kid who committed suicide, and he's having these deep, intimate conversations with AI and not with his mother. And AI was not going to loop back with him and check in with him. And so as a supervisor, someone who knows your team, who knows that there are these really serious stakes that you brought up, like every single conversation, every single check-in can be a way for us to connect. But the problem is, if we have like a packed meeting agenda where we're just chopping through all the things to do, we don't have space to actually feel each other. And so that's going back to like my push to sort of slow down, because when we slow down, we actually look people in the eye and we can say, there's something a little bit off on you today. Like, how are you?
Or over time, I'm noticing that your upbeat optimism, Phoebe, might be waning a little bit. So you're looking for those signs and signals.
It's an attitude that we discovered from this, that most of our population thought that they couldn't go to therapy because of their plan.
Okay.
And I wish,
yeah.
I know we're already at time, and I wish that we had more time to touch on that, because that is really important, and destigmatizing the element of, oh my gosh, I can't go to therapy, I have a clearance, and my clearance is going to get revoked. That is not accurate. That is not true. And maybe next year we'll be able to dig into that a little more. But thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. I really appreciate it, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Phoebe, and thank you, ClearanceJobs. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you.